and it's that the first stage in a person's spiritual decline, chas v'shalom, is the lack of effort when serving Hashem in prayer, in tefillah. Now, before we carry on, I just want to define the terms of tefillah or prayer. Doesn't mean that you have to open a siddur and say everything there is in the siddur. It means that there has to be communication between you and Hashem every single day. Now, that communication between you and Hashem can be very varied. There's lots of levels. It could be that you cry out, Abba, Abba, help me. Father, Father, help me. That is a tefillah. And according to some opinions, you are yotzi davening if you do that. Abba, Abba, help me. Or you talk to Hashem in your own language. Or, you know, so that's like, and you just talk from your heart and you go for a walk every day in the forest and, or wherever you go, and you communicate and share what's on your heart with Hashem. And then it gets a little more formalized that we can say there's a morning service and an afternoon service. We'll leave out the evening service for now. And in that morning service, there's one level where you do, you know, all the important things, 4 levels of prayer. There's the blessings, then there's the songs of praise, then there's the Shema, and then there's the standing prayer, the Amiga. Now, it doesn't mean you have to do all of those. You could pick if you're not ready to do them all. And if you're only ready to start with Shema, or you start with just when you wake up in the morning saying Modeh Ani, and if you don't know it, text me and we can learn it on the phone. But it's all levels. It doesn't have to be anybody else's definition of what prayer is. And then I'll continue reading inside. Everything becomes parched and cold, dry and cold, if there is an effort in serving Hashem through prayer. Even the routine performance of mitzvot can become burdensome if we're not kind of plugging into this relationship where we are opening our mouths and our hearts to Hashem. One hurries through their observance and loses a taste for Torah study, and the very atmosphere becomes more materially orientated. So according to this teaching in the Hayom Yom, by plugging into prayer on whatever level is relevant for you, you keeping yourself connected to a spiritual reality, and you're not just losing that and getting more material and material. And it goes it goes without saying that a person in such a state cannot possibly influence others at all. So if you're kind of dry and parched and you kind of struggling, doing all your things without a sense of inspiration, you're not going to be able to influence others. Now, it's interesting because this is a teaching from one of the Chabad Rebbes, right? The previous Rebbe, Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson. And for the Chabad dynasty of Rebbes, this influencing on other people is a huge part of service to God, because it says, Basi lagani, laganuni, come into my garden. And then the famous question is, why is it a garden and not a field? And it's a garden because a garden, you're talking about gardening, Linda, and your pot and your flowers. And Karina was talking about her mother gardening. Gardening is effort filled. And we make effort in the world like a gardener beautifies the garden so that we bring light and Kedusha into that garden. We don't just kind of let it be like a field. The field sometimes is just random. You know, wild flowers are growing. Sometimes fields are very beautiful, but there's not that effort involved. So when the Rebbe says, and if you dried out and you parched and your heart, your enthusiasm to mitzvahs has become cold, so it's not only that it's not a good way to serve Hashem, but one of your purposes in life, in the world, is to be a light bearer, to be an agent of bringing in holiness and really affecting other people so that you kind of spread it like a good thing of spreading. So it's interesting because in Corona times, everybody's super aware that you can be contagious and you can spread. And so people should be distant and people this and people that. So we want you to be a super spreader of holiness. You're supposed to be a super spreader, supposed to dispense your light and the light of Torah. And if you're dry and cold, so your own avoda is going to be compromised and your super spreader capacity is also going to be compromised. So I think it's interesting that the Rebbe bothers to say that, because that is a value. It is a value. We've spoken about it through the Hayom Yom so many times, that last week I remember talking about being in the marketplace and why it's important to be in the marketplace. And then that Rebbe saying that he was envious of his, the chassid was saying that he was envious of the businessman, because the businessman has opportunity to discuss Torah and mitzvahs in his life, and with every trade and with every encounter, he's able to not only do his trade, which is selling his material or his shoes or whatever he's doing, but he's having opportunity to speak to people all day long, Torah and mitzvahs. Hi, Sarabina, nice to see you again. Nice. I'm glad you found your way on. So we just started with the Hayom Yom, that a person needs to put the effort into tefillah, because tefillah is going to add enthusiasm to a person's service of Hashem and enable the person to radiate and actually influence others, which we said is an important value. So now we're going to come, okay, so that was our Hayom Yom. So the next thing we're going to talk about is we're going to connect to the Sfirot, and we counted yesterday 38. I haven't counted today yet, so I'm not going to say what, because it's dark already, but we are moving through the week of Yesod, and Yesod is what's called foundation. And foundation is the sphera, the energy of Yosef Hatzadik, and it's the energy of communication, connection, how we engage with other people. Now, I feel like I lost someone. There was Susan, there's Sarabina. I don't know, Susan, we kind of lost Susan somehow. I don't know where she went, but she's not there anymore. So Yosef Hatzadik, I was reading this beautiful essay about him, and the truth is that Yosef Hatzadik really evolved as a person. We call him Yosef Hatzadik, and this week of Yesod, he's the persona that is the example of what it means to engage in relationships in a good way. And the person writing this essay had a really good question. They said, was Yosef always so exemplary in the way that he managed his relationships? So if we look back and we see that Yosef had issues with his brothers, he was tattletaling on them. We know he was the 11th son of Yaakov's sons, and only he and his younger brother Binyamin were Rachel's children, and all the other children were Leah's children. Leah's children, or the children of Leah's handmaiden, or the children of Rachel's handmaid. So he managed to anger most of his brothers, and he was his father's favorite. And as a result, we know they actually thought that it was the right thing to not just get rid of him, but literally kill him until they changed their mind. So as a young person, he wasn't in the most, enlightened place in terms of his relationships. Then we know he goes into prison. And one of the things I like to teach about him all the time is that he did look out for other people. He did notice who was down in the dumps. That's why he asked the baker and the butler what was going on with them, and he managed to tune into their distress and despair after they had bad dreams. And that was really how he got his ticket out of jail, because he interpreted their dreams correctly. And then when Pharaoh had dreams, one of them could say, there was this young fellow in the jail, in the prison, who interpreted my dream correctly. But when he was, before he went to jail, when he was living in the house of Potiphar, we always say, and I've always taught, that Yosef is called Yosef HaTzadik because he resisted the temptation to have relations with Mrs. Potiphar. So he was the main house servant in Potiphar's home. And we know that Mrs. Potiphar had some kind of dream or some kind of nevuah, some kind of prophecy that somehow she was going to have descendants shared with Yosef. And we know that actually it turned out that Yosef married her adopted daughter, Osnat. But at the time, we don't know that, and she doesn't know that, and Yosef doesn't know that, and she's trying really hard to seduce Yosef. So it turns out that according to, it's mentioned in the Gemara that on a certain day, everybody left to go serve some Egyptian idol worshipping festival. And Mrs. Potiphar's home, and it said that Yosef also left behind.
Where did she go?
Do you listen a little lower?
I did, long time ago.
Sarabina, you need to mute you, otherwise we'll hear your conversations at home. So if you want to mute, that might be better. So Yosef HaTzadik, according to, I think it's the Gemara, had intention to sin with Mrs. Potiphar, had intention. And one of the reasons why I'm mentioning this is that, you know, I was just on a weekend, which was like a Torah yoga weekend, not weekend, but seminar, and we were focusing on the idea of wants and needs and desires and how important it is to acknowledge one's wants and needs. But with Yosef, he was really in a struggle. And the Gemara says that he had to put his fingers, his hands right into the ground. He was so tempted to sin that he put his fingers into the ground to like hold himself back, and then he didn't sin. And he's this epitome of somebody who was challenged, was tempted, but he didn't do it. But the reason why one of the reasons why he's called Yosef HaTzadik, also another reason, and I'm bringing the story to show you that, as we've said before in the Shir, that our heroes are people not who don't have struggles, but who have struggles and overcome their struggles. He rises to power in Egypt, and then he sees his brothers coming and looking for grain and looking for whatever it is that they're looking for. And he knows it's his brothers. And we know that he knows that his brothers try to kill him, and he knows that his brothers sold him into slavery, and yet he forgives them, which is really an incredible thing. So Yosef is a person who's not perfect. He starts off and he's not so self-aware. He angers his brothers. He makes them jealous. He does almost sin with Mrs. Potiphar, but then he resists and he doesn't, and he deals with himself. It says he has an image of his father came in front of him, and he was told that all his brothers their names will be written on the choshen, on the plate of the Kohen Goddale, and his name will be left out if he sins. And somehow he manages not to capitulate. And then in Egypt, when he's so powerful and he's the person in charge of distributing grain to everybody, he overcomes his tremendous, possibly he still had negativity with his brothers, and totally forgives them and is loving towards them. So this week is all about relationships and how we move from our emotional center and reach out to others, and how we receive their reaching out to us. So we just finished the day of Tiferet, of Yesod, which is kind of a harmonious balance in our connections and in our relationships. And tonight we're starting the Netzach of Yesod, which is really a call to work hard on our connecting and work hard on our relating and work hard on how we engage with other people. Like, be determined. It says in Pirkei Avos, it says, Asay lecha rav, you should make for yourself a teacher or a rabbi. Then it says, Ukaneh lecha chaver, and you should purchase for yourself a friend. And then it says, and then you will judge all people on the side of good. If you have a rav, a teacher, a mentor, and you have a friend, then you're going to be well set up to judge everyone in a good way. And not to be judgmental, but to see people's best side. So this is a question. What does it mean, buy yourself a friend? Are you going to go to the store and say, looking for a buddy, you know, I'm ready to pay to the lowest bidder or the highest bidder? I'm not sure which would be more compelling. So the idea is that you need to make effort in your relationships. You need, if you have a friendship, you need to invest. You need to invest time, effort, and energy. Make yourself a rav, but invest in making a friend for yourself. So that's, in a way, netzach of Yesod. Make effort in relation to connections because they're holy things. Okay, so that's kind of all coming into the parsha, and really we haven't mentioned anything about the parsha, but we're going to do it right now. There's an interesting halacha, or not halacha, interesting, an interesting little piece that I want to talk about in the parsha. But before I'm going to talk about that little interesting piece, let's talk about the beginning of the parsha. And the beginning of the parsha talks about this idea of a sabbatical year. And it says, Hashem spoke to Moshe at Har Sinai, saying that you should speak to all of Bnei Israel and say to them, when you come to the land that I'm giving you, the land shall lie fallow for a rest period dedicated to Hashem. For 6 years you can sow your field, and for 6 years you can prune your vineyard and gather in the harvest, but the 7th year there shall be a Shabbaton yihiyeh la'aretz, Shabbat l'Hashem. Sadka lo tizra, v'karmacha lo tizmor. It's literally saying that you should make a Shabbos for your land. Now, when I learned about this, and there's more word that says, don't harvest your crops that grew on your own, nor pick the grapes that you had cordoned off just, you know, for your own benefit. Everything should be, it should be a Shabbat, a Shabbaton. It says ve'et an anve nazirecha lo tivzo shanat Shabbaton yihye la'aretz. It should be the sabbatical year for your land. So this is really interesting because Sarabina was just with me now. She disappeared. So let's see, someone's waiting to come in. So people are coming and going at a rapid rate. Susan was in and now she's gone. And then Sarabina was in and now she's gone. So I'm not sure what's happening. People are coming and going. Anyway, so we're talking about the idea of having a Shabbos for the land. So this is a really interesting idea, and it introduces us to the idea that the land of Eretz Yisrael, Linda, yeah.
Is it one the same for the whole world, the year, or is it just whenever you start your farm, like everybody's got a different?
No. There's a account that everybody is following
together,
but it's only for the land in Eretz Yisrael.
Oh.
So if you have land in Rockland County, it doesn't apply.
It's only for Israel.
Yeah. So when it's a Shemitah year, Shemitah, that's what it's called. When it's a Shemitah year, then all the land in Israel, everybody who has a farm or everybody who has a garden where they're growing produce, trees, anything fruit bearing, food bearing, it's for everybody. And it's actually, it's actually all plowing and all agricultural work is supposed to cease during that year. Now, it brings up a lot of interesting questions, because if you're a person, so if you're a person and you're taking on keeping Shabbos, right?
Yeah.
So when you start keeping Shabbos, you have to make an enormous commitment of faith. If I don't work from Friday afternoon all the way to Sunday to Saturday night, what's going to happen with my livelihood? How am I going to keep a job if I don't work on Saturday? Or I work in a particular field, not to say field as in
I know, like medicine or something.
I work in a particular enterprise that Saturday is my busiest day. And if I shut up my shop on Saturday, how am I going to make a living? So the only way you can keep Shabbos is if you have trust and you have faith that you shut down your shop and Hashem will take care of you. So now in this week's Parsha, we introduced to a Shabbaton, a sabbatical year. So you're a farmer, and now the Torah tells you that once every 7 years, you've got to actually let your land lie fallow completely. So it's really that faith that it takes to keep Shabbos compounded. How much is it compounded that you're going to have faith? And then Hashem says, not only will I take care of you in the 7th year, but I'll even make it that the 8th year, which usually you would be reaping benefit, you would be reaping the benefit of what you planted in your 7th year, even in your 8th year, I will reward you that you will have sufficient. And in fact, you will have more by not plowing and harvesting and involving yourself. So this is a huge test for a farmer. And in Eretz Israel, they have special encouragement for all the farmers to keep it, and they even try and give financial incentives to the secular farmers to keep it, because if you can keep it, there's tremendous blessings that get revealed to you through this mitzvah. Now it's interesting, and I don't have stories at my disposal right now, but there's so many stories of farmers who kept the Shemitah and had unbelievable bounty in the 8th year, like ridiculous, like a plague, affected all the farmers except those who kept the Shemitah. They were spared, or they had, lots of miracle stories. So it is in this week's Parsha, and it's an important idea. And the idea of emunah, we talked about it in relation to money. Money is mammon, money, earning. And if we talk about money, we can talk about also the manner that the Yidden, hi Avi, we can talk about the money that you should come for Shabbos one time, Linda, you and Avi, with the girlfriend. Or
we should have.
maybe you should come this Friday night. I
I don't know about this Friday night. It's a busy weekend. Oh yeah, it's his birthday weekend. Oh, we're going Friday, right? Yeah, we have reservations for his birthday.
Oh, okay. Another time. So we have another story that teaches us about faith, and that's the manna that fell in the desert, that you had to take the man for that day and not keep extra for the next day, and trust that Hashem would give you what you need. So that was a training ground for developing faith, so that every day they should have what they need and trust that Hashem would provide. So it's a very
on Shemitah year, I'm sorry. Do they have to like use all imported foods, produce in Israel?
So first of all, there is produce, and what can happen is that they make it hefker. It's like anybody can come and take.
Oh, that's cool.
So people can kind of take. You don't own what it is. So there's different things that they do. One of the things, and I don't know if this is a loophole, But if you sell, if you eat from that land that's been left for everybody, you have to be it's holy now because it's kind of available to everybody. You have to be very careful how you dispose of the peels from that food, and you got to treat it in a very sanctified way.
I see.
There is a heter, which is a legal loophole that you can sell your, the way we sell chometz to a non-Jew. Some people sell their fields to other people, and they're not taking care of them during Shemitah, but I don't think that that's regarded by everyone as the best way to go. And then there is the idea of purchasing food not from Eretz Israel during that time.
Okay.
So it is a test of faith, that many stories of Hashem kind of showing up and showing that he is up to the task. So that is in this week's parsha, the idea of the Shemitah, and then every 50 years there's the jubilee year, in which land that has been sold during, people had debts, and to settle their debts they gave land. They gave up land. So by the jubilee year, all the land returns to original owners, and other details pertaining to that. And then we come across a really beautiful piece, and I want to talk about this a little bit, which is just such a nice idea. It says that Hashem says, I will put my dwelling among you, and my spirit will not reject you. This is if you do all the mitzvahs that Hashem wants us to do. I will walk among you, but nevertheless be God for you, and you will be my people for me. And this is the part I want you to listen to. I am the eternal, your God, who took you out of the land of Mitzrayim to no longer be their servants. I broke the pegs of your yoke and led you forth with your heads held high. So this translation says your head held high. In Hebrew, it's v'olech etchem kumimiyot. Kumimiyot. So this word kumimiyot is I want to spend a little time on this word. So there's two different interpretations of what it means, this kumimiyut. So Targum, Jonathan, that's the translation, Jonathan translates, and he says it means standing up straight. I took you out of Egypt, and I want you to stand up straight. Or I took you so you could stand up straight. And then the Targum Onkelos says, I took you out, and standing up straight, kumimiyut, means to be free. And so there's this beautiful idea of being a person who stands up straight, that I didn't take you out of Egypt so you could be bent over and kind of bent over in a way of not standing up straight. Now it's really interesting because I was just teaching Torah yoga on this retreat, and when I go on retreats, I usually teach a little more Torah than I usually do in my yoga classes. So it's really more of a kind of integrated shir and yoga at the same time. So the blessed, we say a blessing every morning, Zukev Kufufim, which means we thank Hashem that he enabled those ones, Kufufim, and you can see me making this shape with my hand. Kufufim, the word Kufufim has all these fays in it. And the shape of a fay is that it's kind of rounded and bent over. And we bless Hashem that he gave strength to those who are bent over to stand up straight. And when you stand up straight, Zokef, the word Zokef, if you look at the letters, if you would write it out and look at the letters, there's a lot of kind of like upright letters, and Kufufim has a lot of these bent over letters. So Hashem is telling us that he wants us, he took us out of Egypt where we were enslaved, and what he really wants from us is to stand up straight, stand erect, be free, have our heads, held high, that's what he wants. And it's interesting that there's even this body language aspect in the mitzvah of holding your head up high. So just in this idea of standing up straight, like, what does it mean to stand up straight? So we in this period of counting the Omer, and we keep talking about the Omer having different body parts. We got right arm, left leg, right leg, and we kind of standing up. When we can integrate all that we've learned and we can kind of process our ways of being, we can stand up straight and be like upright, integrated and upright. And just another cute thing, that when we talk about the months of the year, so I've often said that Kabbalah holds that Hashem used, well, we know that he built the whole world from the Aleph base. If Hashem was a giant Lego master, so every item in the world is constructed of Lego blocks. And those Lego blocks, really, there are only 22 different blocks. And Lego masters, Legos come up with a lot of different shapes and sizes and colors of Lego, but Hashem constructed every single thing in the world from the 22 letters of the Aleph base. Those are the only kind of blocks he has, 22 Aleph base letters. So one of those letters he used for this month, and this month is the letter Vav, which is this letter of kind of an erect, straight spine, standing up straight. So Iyar, Ani Hashem Rofecha, I am God, your healer. This is the month of Iyar. So the month of Iyar is connected to this letter Vav, which is a standing up straight letter. And just to see that Hashem says, I took you out of the land of Egypt to no longer be their servants. I broke the pegs of your yoke, and I led you forth to stand erect, head held high, and to be free. And I just think it's interesting that we communicate a lot of our reality by our body language. And if our shoulders are kind of, slopey or hunchy, or our posture's bad, or we have this negative self-esteem and we kind of like bend into ourselves and our belly is sort of soft and our back is soft. So that's not what Hashem wants. He wants us to kind of stand proud and stand tall and have a nice erect spine. And I think that I can hear comments and questions, but in terms of things that I have that I actually prepared, that's about as far as I got in the time that I had. So
Very well.
I'm prepared to have questions and conversation and discussion, and we can have for bringing, but I don't like to pretend that I've prepared things that I didn't prepare. So that's what I got. And if anybody wants to chat or talk or ask a question or something, that we can do that. Or we could just say good night and call it a day.
You must be exhausted.
I'm pretty tired, but I'm here. I can be here for another 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or we could just leave it. There must be something that you might want to say or share or comment, or it's a very bad share when there's no questions. That is for sure.
What's the name of that 14th year again?
Well, there's no 14th year. There's every 7th, and then there's the 50th year. 50th is 50. Yeah. So you have 7 cycles of 7, and after each 7 is a sabbatical, and then there's a jubilee year.
Oh, jubilee. Okay.
Yes. And in the secular world, they have the idea of a sabbatical and the idea of a jubilee, but it is a real thing, and we mimicking it in a way because we're counting these weeks between Pesach and Shavuot, and so we have 7 weeks of 7, and then the 50th is the day of Shavuot.
Okay.
So you can bring Avi for Shavuot dinner, and then we can learn afterwards.
I will try.
Yeah.
It's hard with him, but I'll try.
Yeah.
He doesn't come.
And anyone else want to come for Shavuot? I'm offering. We stay up all night and we learn, and it's a fun yontif.
You stay up all night?
Yeah, it is a custom to stay up all night because we're getting the Torah the next day. So
No, I know men do it. I didn't know women do it.
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorite customs. I mean, I need people to learn with, but it is fun to do. I didn't even look actually when Shavuot is. Let's see when Shavuot
Did you
is.
look up the book, The Dance of the Omer, that I sent you?
Well, hang on a second, because not only did I look it up. Oh yeah.
What is the next Shemitah year?
Wait, Shavuot is Sunday night. It's very soon.
Yes.
It's the 16th of May.
Yeah.
A week from Sunday.
Yeah, but yeah. So Susan, I bought that book, and I actually know the person who wrote it is the son of people that I know.
He's very young and
Yeah,
brilliant.
he must be very young because his parents are my friends.
Yeah, he's like in his 20s, and Sarah was getting a weekly thing from him when he was going through a very difficult
Yeah,
time.
so I know his
Sarah said,
parents.
write a book, and it's a beautiful book.
I got it, and it's very nice. It's called Dancing Through the Sphirot, I think. And it's really
Yeah,
very
yeah.
nice.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, very nice.
I'd like to share something quickly unrelated, but it has to do with like Shemitah is like faith and miracles, and Jews believe in miracles. So when Talia was about 18 years old, maybe a little less, out of the Teva, she one day just went off oxygen. She was dependent per hour, per minute, because we checked her numbers. But God decided one day on the first day of school of that year to take her off completely, and she was off for 15 years. It's an incredible thing to witness.
Wow.
Then she went back on for the last 2.5 years because she got pneumonia twice, and she was on an incredibly high number, and she was tethered again 24/7. And after praying, Hashem, you did this miracle once, please do it again, and it wasn't looking good. This yesterday went to the doctor and took a huge leap, not off, but a huge leap.
Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem, and please God,
Amazing.
let it just continue. And I just wanted to share that I believe in miracles and Shemitah
Amen.
miracles and personal miracles. I believe.
It's
Amen.
beautiful.
We
Good
should
for
see
you, Susan.
miracles. So
Oh,
Karina,
that's
I see
beautiful.
half of your face, like somehow you like, yeah, that's
There she goes.
okay. So anyway, so unless somebody has something else to ask or to say, we can, I appreciate that story. Karina, do you want to share anything? Say anything?
No, Karina's a little down. She's listening to a lot of lectures this week because, you
Yeah.
know, of everything that happened. And, you know, I'll tell you that this could have been anybody's brother and anybody's son and anybody's father and anybody's uncle. And, you know, as a Jewish people, we just feel it. And I feel so tremendously sad about all that,
One heart,
you
one
know.
family.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
know, like the young kids, like it's just, it's so hard. It just hits you in the gut. But, you know, I'm not being sad. I'm, you know, being faithful and saying everything happens for a reason. It's not for me to know. It's above my pay grade or whatever it is. But, you know, sometimes the rabbis say things like that. But, you know, I just think it really is a tragedy. And I always tell my kids everything in life is a lesson or a blessing. So, you know, I want to know what the lesson is from a tragedy like this.
You want to hear a great saying I heard from this? Instead of
Of-
believe what you see,
Of course, I want to hear it.
see what you believe. Instead of believe what you see what you believe.
Well, what we do know is that, you know, it definitely was a tragedy, and it happened on a day that, you know, one of the things about Lag BaOmer is an interesting duality, Lag BaOmer. On the one hand, you know, we make bonfires and we celebrate it as a really happy day, but the day itself is already a contradiction. Why are we celebrating? Because the plague that was killing all of Rabbi Kiva's students stopped on Lag BaOmer, but it was a plague and a lot of students died, 24,000. And then it's the day that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai died, and we, you know, and he said, I want you to make this day into a celebration. So right there, you've already got a lot of complexity and contradiction of happy day, but it's the day that this rabbi died. At the same time, we're joyful that the plague stopped, but we must be tremendously mournful that there was a plague for all those weeks that preceded. So within the very day is an aspect of conflict and contradiction, like how can we have this joy on a yard site, and how can we, you know, we're celebrating that Rabbi Akiva's students stopped dying, but really I think there were maybe only 5 students left, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was one of those 5. Can you imagine that all of Rabbi Akiva's students? So there's a lot of, even in the day before we get to the tragedy that happened this year, to all of those holy neshamas who were celebrating being with Rabbi Shimon in this day, that their celebration should turn into a tragedy. So I think for me, and I know that there's a lot of people who've been coming, you know, on social media and announcing their beliefs, you know, and speaking about it and responding. And I personally didn't feel like I could say anything at all, but now you're asking me. One of the things that Rabbi Shimon stands for is that he is a person who authored the Zohar. The Zohar is the deepest Kabbalistic text. It's the origin of the Kabbalistic tradition that we have. In the depth of the depth of the depth of something or other, of the truth of matters, is a place where things exist, paradoxes exist. Two completely contradictory things can exist. Another place where they exist is Shamayim, because Shamayim is fire and water happening at the same time. And I think the fact that such a tragedy happening on a day that's dedicated to joyfulness, and at the place in which that joy is actually centered, that there should be such an overt tragedy, is really like, if, and I'm just formulating this as I'm talking to you because I didn't really plan this or think it through before, but if Corona and this whole crazy time of Corona took us on a big jump to all the lessons that we've been learning from Corona. It's not about the external world, it's more about the internal world. It's not about davening in shul and participating in all the out there. It's like, come in, get into, you know, be more home, be more family, be more inner, blah, 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 all those lessons. Now we've got to start learning a whole other amount of lessons about being able to hold paradoxical truths that normally we can't hold together, but we have to start holding paradox. And I have a teacher, her name is Sarah Yehudit Schneider. She's an amazing teacher. She has a website called A Still Small Voice. And A Still Small Voice is a quote from Tanakh, where there's a story with Eliyahu Hanavi, and he's running away. People want to kill him. And then he's hiding, and he wants Hashem to show himself. And Hashem sends a wind, a big wind. And then he says, Hashem, are you in the big wind? And he's not. And Hashem sends this and Hashem sends that. And he's trying to acknowledge, where is Hashem? And at the end it says, Hashem is in the still small voice within. So that's the name of her website. She's a very deep teacher. And she's been teaching for the last maybe 2 or 3 years about the value of paradox, of being able to hold two things together that seem to be contradictory. And she's been teaching for a long time that this is where our understanding spiritually has to go, that we can wrap our heads around paradox. And if you think about it, Lag BaOmer is one of the happiest days of the year. And Rabbi Shimon is one of the deepest teachers. I mean, the fact that there's so many thousands and thousands of people that go to be with Rabbi Shimon on Lag BaOmer, like one of the rabbis said, this is the biggest thing that happens in Eretz Israel all year. And that in the middle, and what's Rabbi Shimon all about? He's all about light. And we make a bonfire, and we celebrate the light of Torah, and we celebrate the light of Kabbalah and the light of Chassidus, and light, and radiance. And in the middle of that, to have such a darkness and tragedy and suffering. And not only that, there's even, how did it happen that and I don't know if this is true, but people are saying that policemen closed doors that should have been open and made stupid decisions, and like the dark of the dark, Jews doing stupid things that other Jews had to die. Terrible, really terrible. So in the dark is in this radiance of unity and Rabbi Shimon and Lag BaOmer. I mean, if it would have happened at Rabbi Shimon's kever any days of the year, it would have been heavy. And if it would have happened in Lag BaOmer anywhere in the world, it would have been heavy. But at Meron, at the kever, right on Lag BaOmer, like crazy, right? So it's an intense, dark in the midst of light. And it's really paradox. It's like in the yin yang sign, in the middle of that light is the real spot of dark, and in the middle of the dark is the spot of light. So why did Rabbi Akiva, who was Rabbi Shimon's teacher, why did he start laughing when he saw the Beis Hamikdash destroyed and foxes running? Because he said, now I see this, the fulfillment of this prophecy is going to lead to the redemption. When you see such a darkness in the midst of light, I don't know exactly what it is, what the lesson is, but I do know that we can't be so black and white. We've got to start, it's almost like an infinity sign. We've got to learn how to handle paradox. Like I can love you, but disagree with you. You're my brother, but you on the other side of the political, side. You're maybe I hold different opinion than you, but I can still be with you. This paradox. And we've got so one-tracked. If you're not like me, I want nothing to do with you. If you don't do like me, then I cancel you. If you're not, we can't be all white or all black. There has to be this ability to handle paradox and contradiction. And maybe for me, maybe that's what I get out of it, that Hashem wants to show us that things are not black or white, that in the white, you're going to have the black, and in the black, you're going to have the white. And for us to stop being so linear in our thinking. So is it a tragedy? Of course. The darkest tragedy in the lightest of the light, but the lesson has to be to learn something from it. And maybe the lesson is like more of this infinity sign, that to not dismiss someone on the other side, but to see that you have a relationship and a connection even to that which you hate. And the person who hates you has a connection to you, to something that they love. And not to be so linear and one-tracked about the way we hold reality for ourselves. I don't know if that makes sense.
I like that. Yes, I like that. And to someone like me, it makes a lot of sense. So I appreciate it.
Yes,
I needed to hear that. Thank you.
I feel like I want to dedicate whatever learning we did to the neshamas of the people that passed.
Amen.
And
Amen.
actually, while we were driving back from this retreat, one of the women in the car was telling some stories about one of the men who was there, what a righteous person he was, and how he, right before he died, he was making phone calls to try and make sure someone who was waiting for a loan should hear that he got his loan. And Sarabin and I were listening to the story thinking that he walked out to make a phone call. We were hoping that he walked out, he was saved, but actually he walked out, and then maybe he was trying to come back in again, and he was one of the people. But his neshama should have an aliyah. I don't remember what his name was, but all the neshama should have an aliyah, and we should maybe be able to make our thinking a little more nuanced, especially in our judgment of circumstances and situations. And
Beautiful.
That's what I have. All right.
Very nice. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Good night. Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you so much. Even
Thank you
being
for-
tired.
Thank you for bringing it up. I'm sorry I should have mentioned it because it's such an obvious thing, but thank you for giving me the chance to say that.
No, I needed to hear this. It was very nice. I promise. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Good night. Good night.
Have a good night.
Good
Night,
Thank you.
Rafa. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
All the best.
All the best.